Thank you. All right, it's 7 o'clock, so I'm going to call this regular meeting of the Board of Education to order and invite everyone to join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda? So moved. Thank you, Meg. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Stacy. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Approval of consent agenda, which this evening includes our January 7th, 2025 Board of Education regular meeting minutes, January 14th budget meeting minutes, January 16th budget meeting minutes, approval of an out-of-state field trip for the Portland High School Band and Chorus to Agawam, Mass in May, approval of an out-of-state field trip for the Portland High School class of 2026 to Philadelphia, PA in November, the approval of box tops for education donation to Brownsville Intermediate School in the amount of $38.60, approval of Planet Aid donation to Brownstone Intermediate School in the amount of $331.65, and the approval of the Shutterfly donation to Brownstone Intermediate School in the amount of $495.12. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Thank you, Kim. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Angela. Any discussion?
I'm curious what the Planet Aid donation was connected to.
I think is that the bid box.
Mike, what, that's the box top thing or?
Hi, everyone. The Planet Aid donation is a clothing bin that's outside in the parking lot. And it was the middle of last year, our PTO was trying to look for ways to help the community and also raise funds. That's something that they had at Brownstone, I think probably right before COVID, they took it away. Got permission from the town, put it there, and I think they're supposed to come and empty it and then pay it out based on the weight of the bin, like once every 3 months. They didn't pay it out until recently, so that's why we got that kind of large lump sum.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thanks for discussion. All right, is there a motion? There was a motion. It was seconded. Any other discussion? No, all in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Audience of citizens, do we have anyone with us in person who wishes to address the board at this time? How about online?
We've had 2 people join.
Okay, should we give them just a few seconds?
Good.
Okay, thank you. And there will be a second opportunity for public comment toward the end of our agenda. So I'm very excited for the next item, it's our Portland Public Schools Spotlight. And tonight we are very fortunate to be joined by some of our wonderful staff from Valley View to hear about their superhero character assembly.
Dylan, do you have a presentation? Thank you. So while he's queuing that up, I'll give a little bit of background to this. So this evening, I'm really fortunate to have 3 of the Valley View staff members with me. 2nd grade teacher, Lindsay Clemish, Krista Salvatore. She's new to Valley View this year. She's our social worker. And Lindsay Kern is one of our special education teachers. So when I met with teachers, when I made this transition to Valley View over the summer, one of the themes that came up from pretty much every person I met with was asking me if I could breathe some light or bring the committee to breathe some light into our assemblies. So, we have students that in those assemblies that are as young as 3, and our oldest students in those assemblies are 6 years old. So to entertain them for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, maybe teach them a little something, we had to be creative. So out of that evolved, we are I inherited this. We are the Valley View superheroes. And so I took that idea, I ran with it. The climate committee work together to come up with some of these ideas. So we're going to share with you this evening what we have done, the work we've done with those assemblies this year. Our assemblies are typically on the day of the month when we have the delayed opening. It's that afternoon. Again, they last for about 30 to 45 minutes. And rather than continuing, our slides are going to give you more specific information about what we're teaching. So we'll just go with that. So I don't expect you to be able to see this, but this is, we revamped the Valley View Climate Committee a little bit this year. Part of it was going through from September all the way until June and deciding which character education and social emotional learning theme we wanted to focus on each month. So it kind of started there. The assemblies have evolved out of that. And then on here, you'll see that the PTO gets involved and they plan some activities around each one of those themes. And we also try to incorporate some teacher things each month that somehow go along with it. It might be some type of food drive or just something that kind of ties it all together. So again, I don't expect you to see that, but that's the work that the PTO, the climate committee, and several members of our staff work together to plan the Valley View climate events.
Ryan, can I just ask you to stand at the podium so
Oh,
that
yes,
folks
of
at
course.
home can hear you through the microphone?
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, go ahead. So you see us standing here. The only character that we don't have here this evening is Ollie the owl, who is our mascot. But these are the superheroes, the principal himself, and our mascot who facilitates each of these assemblies. To Ollie and our superhero. This is how we kick off each one of the assemblies with introduction of our superheroes and our mascot. And quite honestly, this is one of the things I love about working with kids that are this age or these ages is we could probably leave it at that. And a lot of times at the end, we'll put on like the YMCA or we've done like Cotton Eye Joe. Like we could just do those two things and they would have a blast and get to dance around and have a great time. But we like to teach them something as well. So this is where we started again. We call our behavior program the superhero behavior at Valley View. It all falls under being safe, being responsible, and being a good friend. So the first assembly was really focused on our three superheroes teaching about those behaviors. So we call, if I can get this right. We have the safety specialist, which is Lindsay over here. We have friendship flyer, which is Krista, and then we have the responsible ranger. And that came out of these three categories. And the kids loved it so much the first time we did it that we just brought the superheroes back and continued with those specific characters with such assembly. Got it. For each one of the assemblies, we come up with some type of pledge that we then hold on to throughout the month for whatever that social emotional learning theme or character theme is. Go ahead. And these are just some examples of how we teach the students during the assemblies. Again, our three characters had, each had one of the areas of our behavior program that they focused on, and we put pictures on the slides as visuals. And, you know, again, just reinforce that, especially throughout that first month of school. And then toward the end of each assembly, we have some type of activity that is appropriate for our kindergarten and our first graders. In this case, it was listing what the specific rule was, showing two pictures. And it's kind of hard to see from far away, but one is a perfect line in the hallway. And the picture on the left is students running in the hallway. So we asked students to describe what's happening in those pictures. And then each classroom teacher had a yellow and a blue large sheet of paper. And the class as a whole had to decide which one was like display that behavior, and then the teacher and the whole class held up either the blue or the yellow paper. So we can thank Gail Lebrecq, who was previously the Valley View and the Gildersleeve music teacher. She wrote that school song. All of our first graders, they knew it from our very first assembly this year. And our kindergarten teachers did a really good job of teaching it to their classes. And now that is a major part of the assemblies. One other thing we do is, and this is we do this with each one of the assemblies. We pick 2 students from each class, and 2 students are recognized for superhero behavior. They get to come up during the assembly and get recognized in that way. They get the certificate, and then they get their picture taken up for our newsletter. So with that, our second assembly was on feelings this year, so I'll turn that over to Krista.
Hi, so I'm gonna talk a little bit about our assembly in October, which was feelings themed. But before I do that, I wanted to mention something that's been really neat this year. Like Ryan said, I'm the school social worker clinician at Valley View. One of my responsibilities this year is teaching the kindergartners social emotional learning lessons daily. So I worked into the special schedule. We're on a 6-day rotation. And every morning I'm in a class teaching an SEL lesson, which has been really fun. The nice thing about that is that I'm following Second Step, which is an SEL curriculum. And we've been able to align the themes from Second Step with our assemblies. So as I was moving into October and that unit, we were able to align it with our assembly, which was feelings. So it was really nice that it kind of all wrapped together and we had this like school-wide kind of theme of feelings that month. So like Ryan was saying, we have a school pledge. This one was around feelings. I'm not going to read it, but the gist of it is that, you know, we want our students to feel safe to express their feelings. I always tell my students that I'm never going to tell you not to be mad, but we want our students to have the skills and the toolkit to express their feelings in healthy and safe and responsible and appropriate ways. That was the gist of the pledge. We also read this book called In My Heart. In the story, the character talks about herself as a house, and the house encompasses all of her feelings. On the next slide, we have, we go forward, examples of all of the feelings. So what we did was we had a big cardboard cutout of a house at the front of the gym, and we had all of these hearts, and students were able to come up and place the hearts in the house as we read the story and kind of go through each feeling and discuss them individually, which was really nice. Here are some more examples. We used some of those visuals and it got a little Halloween themed because it was October. Where we used some pumpkins, but also some faces and encouraged the kids to, you know, use the facial expressions and body languages and context clues to figure out how each character was feeling. They had a blast getting to be picked. At the end of October and at the end of this assembly, we were able to segue into our next theme, which was caring, and it aligned really well with our food drive, which we had planned for November into the Thanksgiving theme. So it all kind of flowed. It was really, really nice, and we were able to kind of talk about caring and why it's important, and why doing the food drive is a way to care about ourselves and our community and people we need.
So the next assembly that we did, Krista kind of mentioned it already, was our caring assembly. So again, we started off with our superhero pledge, and at this point, I think the kids have really gotten the hang of kind of our structure and what that looks like. So they really buy into that. You can go ahead. We asked some kind of key questions, and the way that we did this is just kind of walk up. We took our turns as our different superheroes, and we walked up and just kind of put the questions out there for the kids, and they were able to come up with actually some really, really insightful answers for a lot of these. Some of them, you know, how do we show someone that we care? One of the answers by asking someone how their day was going. And like I said, even our little kids were really able to, at this point, kind of buy into a lot of these things and come up with a lot of really insightful answers themselves. And then just some more of the questions that we asked, and some of the kind of answers that we provided, and some answers that they came up with on their own, like what does it mean to be a caring person, help others, share, show kindness, be polite. And then how do we show someone? I think I talked about that already. And then what was really cool about this assembly is we were able to really involve our first graders at this point because they had gotten kind of the routine of what these assemblies look like. So a lot of our first graders were able to join in and participate in skits that showed what caring looked like, and maybe some, you know, like what I would call examples and non-examples of things that we should do to show that we're caring, and things that probably aren't the best choices. And then again, we were able to segue at the end kind of into one of our more community-based projects where we talked about our Valley View mitten tree and donating and bringing in mittens for people that needed them.
Great.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Lindsay.
And this is our practice for tomorrow, because this is tomorrow's assembly.
I think the best, what I like most about these assemblies and how they've kind of taken on this year is that you know, I talked with Meg a while ago, and it kind of brings you back to what we did back then, and now we're doing it again. We bring the mitten tree, which we did, and we have the big food drives, which we did. So it's nice to kind of tie in the old school with a little bit of new school, and it's nice to put that twist on it. But this is what we'll be doing tomorrow. We're going to be talking about kindness, and this will lead into February. It's talking about, you know, Valentine's Day and caring. So we always talk about what does it mean to be kind. It's kind of like the kinesthetic audio visual, like what does it look like? What does it sound like? What is it to be kind? So treating other people with care and respect. I'm gonna go on to the next slide. What does that look like? So how can we show each other that we're kind? And then last one. And then how do we spread it? So it's like a domino effect. And then we would do activities that kind of coincide with that in the school for everybody. And we involve the preschoolers, kindergartners, first grade, kind of tying it all in. And then we have our kindness activity that we'll do with the classes, holding up red paper and blue paper. What is kind? Sharing but not kind is eating all the cake and not sharing. So there's a little humor in there.
Awesome. Yeah. So we wanted to move through that fairly quickly. It's, you know, there, when you put it all together, you know, we realized that there has been, you know, a lot of content that's been created. But again, we've had a ton of fun with it. You know, we, as you can see in that first video that you saw, like we play a lot of music during the assemblies. You know, every time we welcome the superheroes, they are so high energy. They're great at, you know, dancing and high-fiving and just, you know, making it really, really fun for the kids. You know, some dancing and just, you know, music at the end, you know, giving our students, our little ones. I mean, they have a ton of energy. Hopefully they learn a little bit, you know, during each one of these assemblies. And then we try to carry it through on the morning announcements and throughout the month with Krista. And we also have Cheryl McDonough, another social worker. She's mostly at Brownstone, but she comes over to start her day every day with one of our first grade classes each morning, teaching social emotional learning to them. So at this point, each class at Valley View, as well as each of the 3 grade levels at Gildersleeve, receives some type of social emotional learning lesson at least once every 6 days, and then we carry that into the classroom. Any questions for us, for myself or the other superheroes?
Well, I love it. It brings back memories for some of the things of crazy stuff that we did, but I'm like, do you use the first graders sometimes for skits? Cause that's always,
Which I love, like we get them up there on stage and it's really, it's like the old times. It really is.
yeah. Oh, that's great. It looks like a lot of good energy. I love the costumes too.
Yeah,
It really is great. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Nope. Thank you all so much for
Yeah,
coming. We
it's fun.
appreciate it. All right. We have both of our student representatives with us this evening. What have you got for us?
The students at Portland High School have had a wonderful few weeks leading up to the long weekend and are looking forward to an exciting few weeks ahead. There's quite a bit happening on campus. Portland High School is proud to offer a wide range of extracurricular activities that go beyond sports. For example, this week alone, we have meetings scheduled for Engineering Club, DECA, Student Senate, as well as our lovely morning announcements. Additionally, our music department has been buzzing with rehearsals every day as students prepare for upcoming performances. Sorry?
What's the name of the play?
Anything goes.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Speaking of our music program, the band and chorus will be performing at the Wolfpack event this Friday, which is going to be an exciting experience for both performers and attendees.
In the realm of athletics, PHS is preparing to hold 2 full days of wrestling matches over the next 2 Saturdays. These events are not only a great showcase of our athlete skills, but also a wonderful example of the abundance of community support that we have. The wrestling team, along with their dedicated parents, are working hard to put on a fantastic event with delicious food provided by the wrestling parents and generous donations from local restaurants and organizations. And regarding clubs again, I'm not sure that we've discussed all the clubs that we have, so I wanted to outline them for you. We have Art Club, GSA or Gay Straight Alliance, Hiking Club, which is my favorite, Model UN, WPHT Announcements, Engineering Club, P Club, which is service-based, Jazz Band, Sewing Club, DECA, Math League, Senate, and Ski Club, which works in conjunction with the middle school. In addition to all these clubs, PHS also has a variety of honor societies that students can join in their upperclassmen years. These include Tri-M, which is for musically inclined students, National Honor Society, and National Technical Honor Society. And that concludes the list of clubs. Lastly, as we wrap up the first semester, students are busy, like always, with assignments and projects. There's a lot of energy in the atmosphere as students prepare for the last few classes of the semester. Students and faculty are really looking forward to what's ahead in the second semester, or what is known as my last semester ever as a high school student. That's all we have.
Thank you. Do we have questions for our student reps?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, that's hard to believe. You're graduating in the spring. All right, well, thank you both for the updates. We appreciate it. Communications and updates. We'll start with Dr. Britton.
Sure. So, a few communications with you. What I did in your Google Drive is I just collected all of the emails that we've gotten advocating for the health position to be increased to full-time. So I put those there. Also, as I was responding to them, and a lot of them were sent to you directly. So, but I thought I'd put them all in one place there. I shared those with you. I also shared a letter from several teachers advocating for the special education positions, both, well, primarily the grant funded one at Gildersleeve. And again, I put them all there for you, just so you have them in one place. Most of you got them through email, but I wanted to make sure they were in one place there for you, as you know that's going to be a focus of your considerations on the budget tonight. So were there any questions on any of those communications?
No, but I just want to tell you that I kept track of them on my drive, and there were at least 45 letters in support of a variety of issues, and just acknowledge that everybody's email was read and looked at by everyone, and they will be part of the record.
Good. Good.
Yeah.
I did receive one resignation from Eric Fritz, a paraprofessional of ours, is heading back to school and couldn't make his schedule work. So we wish Eric well and good luck in his future studies. We did include that letter of resignation there. So the only other thing I wanted to keep on the agenda for tonight, so last week I'd mentioned to you, I asked the board if there was an interest in the board sending a letter to Representative Carpino and Senator Needleman, kind of summarizing some of our concerns and advocating for what we would like to see them advocate for in this legislative session. So thank you, Laurel and Meg, for helping me sort of wordsmith up a letter. It's the same letter. I just have it one addressed to Christy Carpino and one addressed to Norm Needleman. I'm sorry I couldn't have them to you as quickly as I did. I sort of wrote it this weekend, and Meg and Laurel took a look at it and cleaned it up, made sure they were comfortable with it. But I emailed it to you tonight and I did put it in the Google Drive. The gist of the email is that the board would be asking Senator Needleman and Representative Carpino to advocate for one, a increase in the ECS grant, right? So the education cost sharing grant is the primary funding vehicle that the state uses to help offset the costs of education. As you know, education is a shared responsibility between towns and governments. I think it's our opinion that the pendulum has shifted perhaps a little too far towards the property taxpayers. And, I think that the letter suggests that maybe it's time to shift some of that back and share that burden more equally between local property taxpayers and the state. So that's sort of the first paragraph. We stop there and see if there are any questions, or otherwise, if you could all get behind that.
It's not included in the package. I haven't had a chance to read it yet.
It's
It
Is it
is.
in here?
It is in there now. Yep. Oh, no, it's not in the printouts. I don't
It's not
think.
in the printout.
oh no. Can
I have copies.
why
here,
don't you?
just pass that down. That, they're both, they say the same thing. If anybody wants to see a written copy.
Right, and Angela, I'm gonna kind of, without reading it, go through it paragraph by paragraph.
Okay, good.
So that first paragraph there is just to say, we recognize that the ECS formula hasn't been increased, right, significantly. There's still that base amount that was put in 2013 and really hasn't kept pace with inflation. And, though we did see an increase in our ECS grant this year, I don't think it's enough. I do think, I understand it may never be 50-50, but, I think that, obviously I would think that more state funding would be helpful to offset the local education costs. And the point we make there is that, I've heard loud and clear, our constituents clamor for two things, right? High quality education services and property tax relief, right? The only way really to accomplish both of those two things is if additional funding comes from the state of Connecticut. So we're not forced to choose between either cutting services or asking taxpayers at the local level to pay more. So that's sort of the gist of paragraph 1 there.
I also see about increasing the reinstatement of the third round of grant funding.
Yeah, so
We're getting
That's
to
the
that.
let me come to
Oh,
that.
sorry,
Yep,
okay.
no
I just
problem.
thought you were done with the first paragraph.
First
There's some
paragraph,
other
right?
things in there.
He's saying first paragraph, but that you're looking at the intro. He's talking about the second paragraph that
okay.
lays out the first concern. So the first substantive
Second
paragraph.
then.
Yeah, so
Oh.
first paragraph is introduction. Thank you for all you do.
Very good.
We're the Board of Education. This is what we would like you to consider. Second paragraph then this is for the education cost sharing grant funding increase. Third paragraph speaks to the excess cost grant, which is something we talk a lot about here. That's again is a reminder, sort of one way I could kind of describe it is an insurance policy against large cost special education costs, primarily that almost exclusively that come from outplacements. And I think here what we're saying is that, hey, state, you identify this as a tier. The commitment in that tier is to 73% reimbursement. 2 years in a row now, you pulled the carpet out from under us in the middle of the year and said you're getting less than that. That's what contributed somewhat to last year's deficit. And it was an unpleasant surprise 2 weeks ago, right? I think what we're saying is, hey, two things. You're going to promise us 73%. We expect 73%. It fully fund what you're saying you're going to give us, one. And then two, you cannot jerk us around. I don't know any other way, nicer way to say it. It is unfair that in the middle of the year, we get one email saying we're reducing that amount because everybody's asked for more. We need to be able to plan a budget around that. And in the middle of the year, if you change that, you are going to disrupt us. And as you know, 2 weeks ago, Stephanie was reporting from a $100,000 surplus to a $20,000 deficit in the course of one email from the state. That is outrageous. That's got to stop. On one level, it's like, tell us what you're going to give us. Even if it's less, we can at least plan for that. I cannot be managing a $25 million budget with that level of uncertainty. So fully fund it, but equally as important is we need that certainty. That's the third paragraph. I hope you can get behind that one.
Absolutely.
Then the third paragraph then, so my fourth paragraph, is, you know, that for the 2 years, the indoor air quality grant had come out, and that was like an incredible deal, you know, that we could get essentially a 50% coupon for what we know is a lot of work, particularly here at the secondary school. Unfortunately, we missed the first 2 rounds. The first round was just too quick. Like, there's no way they were looking for a turnaround in like 30 days. We just couldn't get it together. And that was also questions about whether we could use COVID relief money and what percent of that. And it was too rushed. The second round, we tried, you know, we were being proactive in that, but you know, we were hearing, hey, again, we didn't budget for this. There's not a lot in capital. We'd have to go out to bond. You're working on a bonding package, other things. And we weren't too disappointed in that because at that point we were being promised a third round. The money was there and they were saying, you're going to get a third round. So we were waiting for that this year. But then another email came this fall that said, sorry, third round's on hold. I don't know what happened to that money. It's still there somewhere. It's sloshing around some accounts. I think our ask is bring the third round back. And if it comes back, we gotta be ready to jump, because in our capital budget this year, that money could be doubled if we get a commitment from the town to fund that, and then it gets matched up with up to 50% reimbursement from the state. So our ask is, please bring the third round of grant funding back, which I think we would need to hop on, particularly to fix this building and the 2-pipe system and the wet air and the air conditioning and all of it.
And also, we're not in compliance because as of January 2025,
Right.
we should be monitoring the air quality in all of our buildings, and we don't have the equipment and we don't have the HVAC systems to do that. I understand there may have been a waiver. There may be some waiver ability in that law, but I don't know that we could even take advantage of it. But we're supposed to be reporting air quality to the DAS and also to our website and our community, and letting people, parents, kids know what the air quality is in the buildings. And we're not in compliance right now. So that's the other reason.
It's a concern. That new law is, you know, they put it off for another year, but it's coming. And
Well, we hope.
well, so
Yeah.
that sort of is our ask to say, please advocate for that, and hopefully we'll get another chance to apply for those additional funds. And then the last paragraph is, I understand Senator Needleman and Representative Carpino aren't federally elected. You know, this is Washington, D.C., but we're just reminding them, be aware, and whatever influence they do have with folks in Washington, please be aware that we are concerned that if out of this DOGE committee or whatever it is that's working, you know, we follow the news and are aware of the promised trillions of dollars of cuts, that is something that, hey, we rely particularly on IDEA grant funds and all of our title funds to offset our expenses. If those funds are cut from Washington, we will have a couple of choices. Either we'll ask the state to supplement them, we'll ask the local property taxpayers to supplement them, or we will cut services. Those will be the only choices. If we lose federal grant funding for special education or any of the title funding, and that money is gone, it either will be replaced with an additional revenue stream, state of Connecticut, local property taxpayers, or all of those positions in that last letter in your packet will be cut. I mean, it's what'll happen. So I'm sort of saying, I think you're sort of saying to our representatives, be aware, right? Use your influence to try to encourage our friends in Washington not to look to those areas to cut, but also be aware, because if they do, we're going to be turning to you. So it's kind of like what the ripple on effects might be if those cuts do come. So if you're comfortable with it, Trisha has a hard copy of it. I'd love to pass it around and get your signature, and we would put it in the mail tomorrow.
I recommend we sign it, and assuming that Needleman and Carpino are not on the education committee, they don't know all the bills that go through the legislature at any given time. There's enough information and there's some cross-referencing to the laws that do apply to the HVAC and also to the school finance, the state and school finance committee has done a very good job of explaining what needs to happen in the excess cost grant for special ed. So, and also for ECS, the inequality that exists between the rich towns and the towns like ours that, you know, do well, but we're not Greenwich and we're not the Gold Coast. So I suggest that we all sign them and send it off. And then follow it up with a call and let them know that you're a constituent and you're concerned, and we've sent letters. And that's all we can do at this point. There are days on the Hill coming up in March, and that's also a day to go and visit the legislators and have a conversation. We can also invite them to a meeting to have a conversation at some point, to meet the board and to talk about our budgets.
And if many of us plan to be there, I think it's March 22nd. We got something in the mail from Kay.
Yeah, there's a couple of them. There's a correct.
We could see if they're there.
Yeah, and we
and
can,
available that
absolutely.
day.
Well, you can make an appointment and we can do that ahead of time. So we can absolutely do that. And it's not, this is not partisan, so you come and you talk to, you know, actually, we have a Republican and a Democrat, so it's a bipartisan effort at this point. So, yeah.
Are there questions about this, about either of the letters? It's all pretty straightforward. It's all stuff we've been talking about at length. Yeah. The only thing I would add is
There's
that I
two.
think it might be good to update this just a little bit and send it to the new chairs of the education committee and
That was my recommendation.
the
McCarty
governor as well.
And the governor should get sort of an
And
abbreviated version.
I'll get a copy to the town board of selectmen too, so they
Yeah, and
Sure.
yeah, absolutely.
see what we're wrestling with.
Well, because they're also gonna be a victim of any cuts that occur or any short changes, not victims, but party.
Partners.
Partners in I can modify the letter to the governor. I think the education committee should get whatever you send.
All right, if folks are comfortable signing this, I think it's a good tangible action for our board to take.
And I don't think you need to vote. If you're gonna all sign, I think that's enough, and Trisha will take it back and we'll make sure that gets to the right people.
Great, thank you. Good work on that.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's fun.
That's all right.
Did you have any other? Nope, that's it. Okay. Then while we're,
What else? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I do have one more, an update from Dylan on our tech, because you don't see a camera here, but we want you to know what's going on. So-
Sure. Great.
Yeah, sorry,
Dylan,
thanks,
come up
Dylan.
to the podium. Good catch.
Sorry, thank you. Dylan.
Alright, really quick, this is just so you have all the information. We recently discovered with some of the town's tech employees that Zoom has the capability to live stream directly. Which doesn't make any difference for the people on Zoom, other than they might just notice a notification at the top that says this meeting is being sent to a third party. It's being sent to the public live stream. The only difference for those who typically watch on the YouTube component through the live stream, it now uses the exact same cameras as the Zoom component does. So YouTube won't have a different view or anything like that anymore. They both still use the same audio component and whatnot. The only change is they're all using the same thing. YouTube is still delayed by 30 seconds. one of the nice pieces is that the audio is no longer being split between the two. It's all running through Zoom, and Zoom is able to adjust it for each of you as you're speaking. So hopefully it will make a little bit of a difference in the recording on YouTube. But that was just a quick update for you in case you got any questions as to where that change was and that was streamlining.
A smaller camera.
Yeah, they're the ones that are mounted to the ceiling and the wall.
Very cool.
We tested it last week, the day I was out of necessity, since I couldn't be here to set up the other stuff. Plan was to originally pilot it for this, but it went off last week without a hitch. And the facilities committee is also using this current setup to make it easier for them to get those meetings streamed and whatnot.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dylan. That's great. All right, we are gonna move on to our report from our Director of Student Services.
Sorry, I'm trying to save on paper. I didn't print this week. So you received a copy of your board report, nothing really big to report, but there's a couple small changes just to note. Overall enrollment for IEPs, magnet schools, special programs is pretty consistent. The biggest change that I highlighted in yellow is 2 additional students are slated for outplacement as of January 2024. We knew these were coming forward. Just as a reminder to everyone about the outplacement process, I mark them here when they hold their PBT determining that outplacement is the next step. There's usually a month, 2, 3, 4, 5 months time where students are, seeking an appropriate placement, getting services in place. So those bills aren't typically accruing for multiple months after that happens. So I just put underneath, we're in budget season, just to let you guys know. We have 3 students right now that are pending placement, so not accruing bills, and we have a student that is on medical leave long-term, so is also not accruing bills. So though it is a significant change, these students were planned for in the budget that Dr. Britton is presenting, and on 4 of them, bills are currently not accruing, so just so you're aware. Any questions on outplacement? Okay, new hires that we hired an occupational therapist, which I believe you already heard about, who's been wonderful, already jumping in, offering some district-wide professional development. It's really nice to have someone in-house. Also represents a cost savings. We also hired a clinician for our harbor program here at the secondary complex, which was a tough position to find. We found someone really fantastic who's also a BCBI and a school psychologist, so really credentialed. It has a lot of expertise, which will be nice for that program. As far as open positions, all we have right now is backup van drivers. We're forever searching for people when our van drivers get sick or have to go to doctor appointments. If you know literally anyone that would love to drive a van with a heated steering wheel in 70 weather, we are hiring. We would love for you to come. Any questions about new hires, change the department? All right, a couple updates. School security. We are looking into, we haven't decided, I have to bring it to the leadership team, but there is a comprehensive school threat assessment free training available to districts. About 40 districts use it in Connecticut, and we're discussing as a leadership team if we'd like to bring it to Portland. This would provide comprehensive training for identified staff members on not only like suicidality that we discussed in the context of the policy before the board, but also threats against the school. So interesting training. Some folks in our district received the training in their previous district and spoke really highly of it. So something that we're weighing bringing forward. Good to share in the context of, the lockdown that is not too far in the rearview mirror for Portland.
Sarah, can I ask about that before we move on? How does that differ from other safety training that we've had and other safety protocols that we have in place?
Yeah, so it is drafted by folks that are in law enforcement. So they take a different lens than say like a clinician. A clinician is experienced in things like risk of suicide, risk of self-harm, things like that. Things like, threats of violence toward the school, homicidal ideations, school violence ideations, I think really more verge into the realm of law enforcement. So it's a protocol. It's like a decision tree that you follow to know, if a student makes a comment, and students make a lot of comments. It's a way to be really accurate in your threat analysis. Like, is someone saying this just, because they're frustrated and upset, and this is something that we don't need to investigate more fully, or is this something that needs to be taken more seriously? There's all different criteria around it, like the specificity of the statement, the context of the statement. And it has a whole decision tree, but it is offered free by the state, and it's created by law enforcement agencies and Center for School Safety. So comes with good recommendations, and it came, across my desk, and just given what we went through with the lockdown, I don't think it'd be a bad thing to have in our toolbox in Portland. But we're gonna discuss it as a leadership team.
Gotcha. Thank you.
As far as professional development, we did receive some free PD from the state because of that disproportionality that I mentioned last time. So we have 6 staff from Portland that are getting Orton Gillingham and Wilson Reading System. Those are kind of like top shelf decoding and phonics program for struggling readers. So that's something nice. It also came with all free materials, so we don't have to buy all of those, which is wonderful. So we'll be, stocked of those for the foreseeable future. And then on our PD day tomorrow, we have some in-house PD. So my goal, as I've mentioned, is trying to really align all of the schools to work together. If people are in special services, kind of working across buildings and leveraging who we have in-house. So our district SLP is going to offer some PD on AAC, which is using an iPad to communicate, pictures to communicate, things like that. Julie McGovern, our MML teacher, is going to offer a PD about supporting newcomers. So newcomers to the United States who don't speak a large amount of English. And then our new OT, Alyssa, not new to us, but newly in district, is going to offer a session on OT and handwriting. There's a lot of questions at the elementary level about what handwriting is age appropriate. Should I be changing a child's grip? When did they need OT? Questions like that. And then our district behavior consultant, Mari Wrightington, will offer some behavior strategies for paraprofessionals, which she's done 2 previous days. So it was nice to give people some choice. It was kind of a pilot, like reaching out to my staff and saying who has things they've learned they want to share with their colleagues. These folks were interested. It's a nice way to use our in-district, expertise, and not have to go outside and pay for someone to come in. If we have people that go to PDs and learn things, why not give them the time and space to share it, with their colleagues? Any questions on that?
I just have a question about the handwriting,
Yep.
because we did do some OT before about handwriting and where,
Mhm.
how people hold, kids hold pens and pencils. What handwriting program are you using, or is there a handwriting program at Valley View? For
Yeah,
instance?
that's a really good question, Meg. It's actually something that Ryan and I were recently discussing. We don't have a district handwriting program right now. Everyone's teams are kind of doing their own thing, and we were starting the conversation of, do we want to explore that? What would the cost be? What would the benefit be? Because I think there's a lot of questions around, at what age is XYZ thing appropriate? When do you need to worry about handwriting? I think there's just a lot of questions, and ROT is finding that she gets a lot of students at a much older age getting referred for handwriting. And by 4th, 5th, 6th grade, that's really not something that you can change. It's kind of like you give the accommodations, you have them type, but that similar to articulation, it's not something that's changed that late in your development. So we're talking about it.
Good, I'm glad to hear it. Handwriting without tears is probably the reason why some of those older kids can't write, because it wasn't working. I mean,
Yeah, she did not have good things to say about that.
No,
program.
and I don't.
So we're
either,
looking
so-
into it.
So please, not that one.
Yeah, we talked about bringing back cursive. There was some interest in that. Do we have the old school cursive blocks? It's
Well,
something
they
to
want to write,
discuss.
second graders want to write in cursive. They're always practicing the curlicues or whatever, or trying to connect those letters, but. anyway,
Yeah,
so
way back when I
thank you.
started teaching,
Glad
it
to
was
hear
right
that.
after recess time would be cursive time, and they would put on the music and everyone would kind of do their handwriting books. I don't know if we'll go that far old school, but something to look into.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Transportation, everyone's favorite topic. Service has been good on our vans. We're working out the kinks of kind of who clears off the snow, who gasses up when. That's all been going well. Families are reporting, good service on the minibus, no concerns there. I did want to shout out, we have 2 paraprofessionals, Kayla Comesso and Steve Libera, who have a van certification from previous jobs, and they've been helping us out when we do have drivers out because we don't have a reliable backup pool. They've been filling in, and the building principals have been wonderful about letting them, get coverage if we just need a quick run during the day. So that they have been really enormously helpful in that regard. So that's it for me. Any questions? Yep.
How often do they need to fill in as backups?
Rarely.
Okay.
Our drivers are really reliable, but occasionally there's a doctor appointment. Or, someone has a child gets sick during the day and they're running home. It's only been a few times, but Kayla is actually going to drive for us in addition to being a para this summer. So she's going to run one of our ESY events and then also be a para for some extra, work with the district, which is lovely. That's great. Yeah.
Good.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Problem.
We're gonna move on to new business. And the first item under new business is a proposed update to the Spanish textbooks in our middle school and high school. And this is a proposal that came through the curriculum subcommittee. And there was a unanimous recommendation that this move on to the board for consideration by the full board. So I'm not sure who's speaking to that this evening. Kate, are you going to speak to it?
Certainly can.
That would be great. Thank you.
Have the team do, Kate.
Take you under tutoring class and double.
Oh, no.
So for a couple of years, the Spanish, the World Language Department has been looking to modernize their curriculum and to really make it mimic the standards on the Apple assessment as well as on the AP exam. And that's what this textbook request does, is they haven't had a standardized textbook in a very long time. And they've been using a lot of homegrown materials. And this is this is an opportunity to put together a sequence from the 8th grade where they start with Spanish 1 all the way up until AP. It's timely, it's relevant, it incorporates a lot of interactive speaking and listening, and the teachers are super excited about it.
When this was presented to the curriculum committee too, they impressed on us that the textbooks they're currently using are from 2007. And as we all know, language changes over time and cultural references shift over time. And when you've got students who are learning from textbooks that are that out of date, they're not learning how to speak in a relevant way. So I think that the curriculum subcommittee was that sort of stuck on that particular fact and felt like it was really important that we seize this opportunity to move forward and make sure that our kids have up-to-date textbooks.
I think it's sad to see the Walkman is not relevant anymore.
And the VHS.
Yeah.
And the vendor that we're purchasing is the same vendor that we're using currently for French. So that was reassuring that the lessons, the language teachers enjoyed both French as well.
Yeah, they've been able to vet it at a couple of their conferences and with their peers in other districts. They feel very confident in the selection.
Yeah, that's great.
I mean, Kate, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is something we'd be going after a Gildersleeve grant.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, good clarification. So we're not
Yeah,
impacting the budget as
Yeah,
well.
right. So you're,
Right.
by approving this text, tonight, you'd be approving the text. There's no funding you're approving, depending how you do with this, but our conversation is, as the request came to me, we were kind of peeling some out that we thought would be good Gildersleeve grants, and this was a perfect candidate for that. So you'll likely see that in the Gildersleeve grant probably 2 months from now.
That's right. And it is also worth just being aware that when we talked about this in curriculum, there is an online component that goes along with this. So there's an initial layout of funds for the textbooks and there's a contract for a certain number of years, right? For 6 years of the online platform. But at some point, this would become potentially something that would appear in the budget to maintain the online part of the curriculum.
What is the actual cost of this right now? What would we be asking the Gildersleeve grant to?
I'm gonna pull from my memory. I want to say it's about $32,000. And the teachers are gonna round out the Gildersleeve grant with some cultural experiences to go with each level of the Spanish curriculum. So it's not just textbooks that we're asking for,
Okay,
but guest speakers and immersive experiences and field trips and those kind of things.
oh, great, okay. Thanks. All right. Bring it on.
Yeah, it's exciting to be able to take action on
It
this.
is.
Are there questions for Charles or for Kate about this proposal? All right, is there a motion to approve the proposed textbooks?
I'll make a motion.
We don't,
We do adopt the textbooks, I believe.
there's no policy. We don't have a policy for adopting. The board doesn't approve textbooks or not. We just say, that's what you want, that's what you get. You can look at it to see it. I don't think you need a motion.
I,
Oof.
Sorry.
It was my understanding that we did need to adopt the textbooks.
Yeah,
Because because it is a purchase. And so I understand that it will be a Gildersleeve grant. That it is a
I believe-
commitment.
Well, we can make a motion and do it just to satisfy, but I don't think there's a policy right now that requires us to approve any textbook purchase.
Let's check that out too.
Do you want us to hold off? Do you want to?
No, I think we should go ahead with the.
What have we
Definitely,
done in the
definitely,
past?
say yes, that's great, buy the books, get the Gildersleeve grant in, but I believe the policy was discussed at some point and we took it off. And did not approve of textbook purchases. Sorry,
Well, I don't know that it would hurt to approve it now, but I will do my
Yeah.
homework and Trish, why don't we take a look and see if there is a policy that we approve textbooks, but Meg, now that you're saying it, I don't ever remember the board taking action to approve textbooks before, and we've adopted things like rating and other things.
yes, we did.
Right, so,
We've approved them as they require a purchase, right? As they require
I
a
don't. believe-
budgetary component.
I don't believe so.
well, let's do our homework.
Let's
We'll
look,
check.
let's just look
Yeah,
at it.
yeah.
I mean, I just should.
It's interesting, but we'll check. Trish and I will do our homework.
All right.
But I wonder you could approve it tonight. I mean, whether it's a policy or not, maybe good practice and
We could start that practice if you want.
I would certainly entertain a motion to approve the purchase of the Spanish 1 through 4 Senderos textbooks.
And I'll second it.
Seconded by Angela.
Is that
Thank
okay
you.
that we're both part of the same committee though?
It's absolutely okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll check it.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. That passes unanimously.
Liam, are all those signed? I don't want that those letters.
They
there.
are.
They're-
Yeah,
and-
Zach, I just
Oh,
have to
pass
sign
them
it.
Thanks, guys. Good. Otherwise, we'll get it to Trish. Sometimes papers get shuffled.
Yeah, that's good. All right, the next one should be a quick one. This is an extended leave of absence request from Sarah Sonstrom.
Yeah, it's included in your packet there. Certainly approve the request to extend Sarah Sonstrom's leave of absence.
Do we have a long-term sub who's already in place?
Yep. Currently in place, yeah.
Is that individual likely able to extend their?
Great. Is there a motion to approve the request?
I second that. I'll make the motion to approve the request for Sarah Sonstrom. For the rest of the year, 24-25.
Thanks, Mike. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Sarah. Any discussions? Nope. All in favor? Aye. All right. And congratulations to Sarah on her new addition. All right, the next item is also a quick one. This is Board of Education Subcommittee assignments. And I'm just giving you a brief update. There are 2 vacancies on one on our Personnel Committee and one on our Policy Committee. And I am very pleased that Stacy has agreed to serve on policy to fill the vacancy, and that Dave has agreed to fill the vacancy on the Personnel Committee. So thank you to both of them. I'm officially making those appointments so our committees can be complete. I would just add that there is a vacancy on the Equity and Inclusion Coalition for a second liaison. If anyone, I'm not going to appoint that right now, but if anybody wants to think about that, and if you have the availability or the interest in serving as a liaison with Sarah to the Equity and Inclusion Coalition, just let me know before our next meeting. So that's that. I don't think we could take any action on it, so we can move on. And thank you, Stacy, and thank you, Dave. All right, the last item of new business is the superintendent of schools mid-year review, and we will be discussing that in an executive session. And we'll move to old business, and the first item is to discuss and approve the 2025-26 superintendent of schools proposed budget.
Take it away.
Charles, I'm gonna let you pick up.
All right, so Stephanie and I have been hard at work, right? So I emailed you today and it's included in your board packet. Everybody have both the letter and the new object report here. So what I heard, I heard you loud and clear over the 2 workshops, and thank you. I thought those were very thoughtful conversations. That you were looking for concerned about the percent increase. I hear you. And also, I'm concerned about some of the reductions that I recommended. And what Stephanie and I did is we kind of went back to the shop and took another look. Like we went back through the budget with a fine tooth comb and did our best to, as promised, get back to you with a 4.5% and include some additions based on our conversations. Now, wasn't entirely successful. I'm close. I'm at 4.61, but we'll get to that. So a couple of things that Stephanie and I have done as we went back through it. I got a sense from the large number of correspondence that we received and from our conversation at the board level that there isn't a strong interest in adding the 0.2 back to the health position that would bring that position back to full time. That is something that I did include in this, so that this revised superintendent's budget does include that 0.2 increase. That is a cost of $15,800. Sarah, Stephanie, and I took a look at students' transportation. Now, if you remember last time, we talked about if we added the third van, we could reap $127,000 in savings. Sarah and Olivia did a great job and looked at those numbers and actually realized that several of those students, based on start times next year at their outplacements, could be incorporated onto the 2 existing vans that we have. So we were able to take out of the student transportation line 83,000. So added 15,800 in, took 83,000 out and adjusted the transportation line item. Additionally, I don't want to give too much details because it's kind of a little bit premature. We haven't opened any bids yet, but based on a recent communication that we received from our consultant, Stephanie and I are now comfortable reducing the percent increase in the insurance from 13% to 10%. Could be a little lower, could be a little higher, but 10% is where our insurance consultant is now comfortable with us being at. However, Tricia did a wonderful job and canvassed our faculty and has now updated numbers on who we could project will be taking insurance next year. And that offset some of that reduction. So it's actually a slight increase. Stephanie felt more comfortable if we put about 17,000 back into that line item and feels like that will be more dialed in as we decrease the overall percent increase, but the census reflects an additional person, looks like either changing plans or taking insurance, and then maybe they're turning 27 or all of the reasons we talked about last time. So 15,800 in, 83,000 out, 17,000 back in.
And
Also-
13% was what we used as a placeholder the last time.
Exactly.
Based
The
on,
last couple of workshops.
exactly, based on earlier conversations with the insurance consultant.
Thank you.
And it was interesting, that email came in right on Friday.
It always does.
It always does, right. I heard loud and clear your concern, Kim, about software. And particularly the screens in pre-K, K1 and 2. I hear you loud and clear, and we have some work to do with our Valley View and Gilder, some of our Gildersleeve teachers about decreasing screen time, particularly at those levels, and whether we have it at all. Right now, I'm not ready to make a dictate to say all screens out of pre-K, K1 or 2. We may get there, but I need time. I need to work with the folks and identify what areas we could be making some of those modifications and getting more back to play-based learning in IRL rather than screen-based activities in our earliest grades. I hear you loud and clear, and I don't disagree, but I try not to do things in a top-down way. I want to make sure that I engage everybody in the conversation. That said, I'm comfortable taking 12,618 out of software in anticipation that I'm successful in that endeavor.
Are those primarily then pre-K or kindergarten through second grades software programs?
There's that, and I also have my eye on a new web filter, email filtering piece of software that we haven't used yet, would help us increase our security. So I'm comfortable with that as a placeholder right now, but not saying exactly what it's going to be.
Okay.
I got some work to do.
Okay.
And then, Stephanie and I kind of went back and forth. We wanted to make some cuts. We're going to reduce that heating fuel. And you heard Bob talk a little bit about that. It's it's something, I mean, but. This is us looking under every seat cushion.
So that tank will just sit near empty and not be usable, is that the story?
Unless we have end of year savings and we can bill it at the end of the year,
Okay,
which is what I'm,
right, okay, I hear you,
so that's something that we could do with end of year savings. So that's why I kind of picked that.
right, okay.
So all that said, with all of those additions, we chipped away and you're now at a new revised superintendent's recommendation at 4.61. Couldn't get to the 4.5. That last $25,000. Stephanie and I sat down. How hard did we try, Stephanie? Every time we threw it out there, Stephanie looked at me like, "Don't do it, Charles. Don't do it." Right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Just
tough.
the whole excess cost piece, just
Yeah.
not knowing if we're gonna already be 10% under in that.
So I watched Stephanie closely when she starts doing this. I saw. Right, so that last 20,000 was destroying her cuticles. So I stopped there at 4.61. Okay. So I tried my best to get you to the 4.5, but I failed by about that 20,000.
That's right. It's close.
It's close. Additionally, it's not part of my recommendation, but I wanted to put it back out there, the third van, right? When we talked about it last time, we had identified the 127. Now we stripped out the 83 because Sarah and Olivia figured out a way to incorporate those students on the two existing vans. So we're down to a savings of potential 63,717 if we got the third van. But that savings is offset by the cost of the van, the driver, and the increased clerical support. So it's actually now an expense to add the third van to the tune of $36,000. Now, of course, that expense means that if we get that van, it's a one-time thing, right? That it will save us in future years because we have the van as part of our fleet and we'll only have to spend the $52,000 on it once, and then it becomes a maintenance, not the big time upfront expense. But it's still that $36,000 increase. If we wanted to do that, I would leave that up to the board right now. I'm not recommending it, but if that's your desire, that would then, to add that 36,000 back in, would raise us to 4.82. So where that gets us to is your options sort of are my revised recommendation, which is at 4.61, or adding the third van back in gets us to 4.82. Or I heard you loud and clear talk about the 0.4 art, which would be a cost of 23. Keeping the high school special education, which would be the cost that I have there, and then keeping the Gildersleeve special education cost there. We can, as you talk now, if you want to add those back in, generally, that now about $25,000 is 0.1, right? Because that's 0.1% of a $25 million budget is 25,000. So, to add the 0.4 art would be a 0.1 increase. To add the PHS special ed would be about 0.3 increase, right? To add the Gildersleeve special ed would be about a 0.2 increase, a little more, 0.25, right? So you can start to see how those positions affect where we at now, which is either the 4.61 or the 4.2. Right, and that's sort of, at this point, I kind of leave it to you for discussion and otherwise, hopefully in some form of action tonight.
Before we jump into talking about those positions, can we just have a brief conversation about the van? Because I think that that's probably an easy one for us to make a decision about now and be able to move forward with that settled. Did everyone follow what Charles said? Because I know when he originally talked about the van last Tuesday, the savings, potential savings were a lot higher, but we all follow that those potential savings are reduced tonight because we're able to realize those savings through the two vans that we currently have. So is there anyone, Megan had sent an email with a question about the van last week at some point, and the point that you made in your email was that our staff have a lot on their plates managing two vans, and we are just now learning it and getting the hang of how that works for our district. And I think your point in your email was that A third van might be a step too far. Let's get used to what we've got.
I'd like to see a fleet plan, because this is where we're headed. If we're gonna continue to add a van or two to what we already have. We don't have a lot of data, and I know Sarah's willing to go and clean it and have oil changes, and we've got paras now who get pulled to drive. But at the same time, I heard Sarah say tonight, please, anybody that wants to drive a van with a big steering wheel, please let me know. We're having a problem, finding, drivers, I think, at this point. But I think a good plan would be to, figure out the cleaning, the maintenance, and the driving part of it. And then come back and it could be in September, October, and let us know, that we've got hopefully not more outplacements, but hopefully, we could manage this in a better way, because the vans are gonna need tires. They're gonna need oil changes. They're gonna need other things as time goes on. And I don't wanna see you taking your professional training and being the automobile cleaner.
I'd like to hear Sarah come up and give us some explanation, because I had 100% different takeaway.
Okay,
Number one, I think we're on great momentum. She's already said this is fantastic. It's given us flexibility. It's given us control of being able to satisfy some of these students. It's given us cost savings. Things like oil changes, that's what the town does. That's what we pay these mechanics for. They'll change the oil, or the local mechanic. So we can't talk about obstacles. We should be talking about opportunities.
Mhm.
And I didn't hear her say that there was a problem with the van drivers. I asked that specifically, and she said no. So I'm getting mixed signals. That is there or isn't there?
No, so there's not right now, and I should have clarified. My point was just I wanted to spotlight those two people that on less than 5 occasions have dropped what they've been doing and helped us with some transportation. Van driver had to go for an EKG suddenly, had to be out, and we're able to cover. Yeah, I mean, I think the driver pool is challenging. I will say we have had 4 resignations of per diem drivers. That said, we think that the reason was because we were operating very small shifts. We found that 20 hours is about the sweet spot of what someone is willing to work. So we do have 2 super, super reliable drivers. It would just be a gamble. I wouldn't want to stand here and say, absolutely, I have a driver ready to go August 1st. It would be, are we going to find someone that wants not a full-time, but a pretty heavy part-time job that is willing to be stable for us, that is not going to call out frequently. That would be the gamble. I think, as I shared last time, the savings that we could realize is very dependent on where our students are placed. So as I mentioned, we have 4 students who are currently not placed, not accruing bills. If 3 of them are all placed in the same placement, 42,000 times 3, that's pretty quick to realize a savings. There's just a volatility around where kids are placed. And that was some of the change of the 127 number came down because we were with a start time change of a student moving from middle to secondary, we're able to move them onto the first van. So yeah, I mean, they certainly give us flexibility. They give us options. I would just caution that the savings won't be as large as that first year. It's going to be small amounts that then grow over time because we're not buying additional vans. But there is, a lot to be said for needing more clerical support. I think I wouldn't recommend personally us moving forward with a third van without that clerical support to manage it, because it is a lot on Olivia and me, way more Olivia than me, of just managing that whole process. So I think it would be an investment, but at the same time, while we're talking about investing in transportation, I wouldn't want to put that over staffing in special education. So I wouldn't come up here and advocate, yes, give me money to buy a third van when my staff are facing cuts. So if it's a question of investment, I would always advocate investing in people that work directly with our kids. In terms of a cost savings over time, yes, every year we will reap that 52,000 plus or minus depending on who's on the van. So that's a convoluted answer. I think it's not all negative. There are a lot of pluses, but there are risks. It's not zero risk. Can we find a driver? Will our outplacement locations support it? So where we can group kids who are in the same geographic region and start at the right time. So I'd say, where kids are placed and who will drive that van are the 2 variables I can't control.
I thought you were going down the path when you talk about the paraprofessionals. Oh, maybe we build a position called driver/paraprofessional. In the morning, they can drive. We'll give them extra money. They'll do the paraprofessional. At the end of the day, maybe they leave a little early. They drive, and we don't have to wait on per diem people. We can actually have a full-time employee that we can depend on. We build it right into their job responsibilities.
Yeah, I think that would be a discussion with the para union.
Right.
of when
You
it's
figure it out.
adding additional responsibilities, but we do have folks who have the van endorsement, and I would always support someone who wants to go and get it.
Yeah.
And work on that type of schedule. One of the challenges though is most outplacements, as I mentioned, start at 8 or 8:15. So if they were to get back to be a paraprofessional, if you're going to West Hartford for an 8 a.m. drop off, you're not gonna be back here till 8:30, 8:45. So it would cut into elementary hours, but yeah, it's something we could explore.
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
sure
it'd
they could be a little late for a
conversation.
class or leave a little early for a class. That's not gonna be a huge.
Yeah, no, it's just something to weigh, you know.
So I think in theory, I'm supportive of the idea of getting a third van as long as it represents significant enough savings to be worth our while.
Yeah.
When we purchased the second van at the beginning of this year, it made sense because in that moment, we were able to realize significant amount of savings, even in year one with the purchase of the van. In this case, because because half the savings can already be realized through the use of our two vans, we're not looking at any potential savings in year one. We're looking at a $36,000 cost.
Well, what's the savings in year two? That's what we gotta look. You can't look at year one
Right.
because that's a cost.
Well, my only point, Dave, is that waiting until we're in a moment when it does represent savings might be advantageous to the board. Instead of
It doesn't make
purchasing
any
it-
sense.
No, it
Instead
does, because we may reach a place where we have outplacements, enough outplacements, which is what Sarah was saying, where in a set, or where there's a benefit, a cost benefit to us. There isn't currently, but there likely will be in coming years. So if we wait until we reach that point, then we'll see a savings.
But I'm reading these numbers, the van's 52,000, we're gonna cost us 36, so we're already saving money in the first year.
on
And then
the-
the second year, we don't have to spend for the van, and that 36, or that difference of, let's say, it's 16,000, would only go up north of that, I would assume.
But cars take, not only buying the car, but it's the maintenance on the car, and it's the driving. You know, I don't know that we have enough, I'd like to see the data at the end of this year as to what it actually cost, and you guys are going and doing your oil changes at Valvoline. or
I
whatever.
can tell you, it's $114 a trip, a student a day is what we spend with M&J.
So 42,000.
Now, how many oil changes can you do for $114 a day?
But I think that all has to be costed into what,
Yeah.
what we're talking about. I mean, it's not just a car, I mean.
Yeah.
a van.
Yeah, I think, Dave, let me just see if I can summarize what you said. I think what you're saying is that for the $36,000 expense, you're getting a $52,000 van at least.
Correct. And then next year, you're not spending the 52, so you're gonna have some savings somewhere between 16 and the 52,000, or whatever the number is of saving.
Yeah, anything beyond the 47,000 in administrative support and the van driver would represent a savings for sure. But it does depend, as Sarah said, on student placements, right? That savings depends on,
Yeah.
do we have a cohort of kids who are
Correct.
going to similar
Correct.
locations?
Correct.
So
Or all of
those-
a sudden, somebody that's two people are in the van now have to go to separate schools, and now all of a sudden we have to go back and start spending that money. So you don't know, but there's a lot of variables that I don't think it would hurt, because I don't think we'd be sitting there. That, just my opinion.
We also talked about a 0.5 secretary position being restored, which would be, part of it would be dispatching the vans. You know, adding one more van would be more dispatching.
So it wouldn't be dispatching the vans. I want to keep Olivia in that role because she has all the relationship with the driver. She's really excellent at it.
Okay.
This would be to offset some of her more
Her more
secretarial
clerical
duties like
secretarial.
POs. Yeah, I don't want to add a whole new human into the transportation mix, but it would offset a lot of her other secretarial stuff that does eat up time.
Yeah.
And allow her to have that flexibility if we were in another part.
So I don't know, for me, I would like to see a better plan of adding a third with all of the support services and costs involved.
The only other recommendation, because Dave, you got my wheels turning, you're right. I mean, that $36,000 expense, it would be even more, and Stephanie won't want to hear me say this, 'cause we did talk about it, might be to move the cost of the van out of operating into capital.
We could.
I mean, and then, the positions would pay for themselves, and we'd be actually having about a 20, if the capital budget paid for it, in terms of the operating budget, it would then save about 70,000, or 20,000, excuse me. You follow me? But right, move it out of this
Into capital.
and to capital, and then if we could convince capital to fund that, it makes.
That
keeps this
would
in
make
place.
sense. I would be happy to entertain that.
But we still have administrative support as a salary.
Right, because I mean, if the savings from the students is 63,000. And the capital budget purchased the van, right? Then back out of the 23,000, the 26 for the van driver, the 20 for the clerical. And we're then saving 15 or so, 10, 15 or so, but it requires that capital expense.
Who has
I
to
know
approve the capital?
We have to go with capital.
it goes, next week, I'm gonna be presenting it at the long range strategic planning committee, I think it's called. And then ultimately it would go with our budget over to the board of selectmen for consideration.
So that's that committee that they just formed?
Right, and that,
No,
No,
that,
no, no, it's the
That's
long-range
another
capital
one?
improvement
It's a
committee
different
that
one.
it's been around forever and they meet ahead of the Board of Selectmen's budget workshops to look through all the capital
What else do we
requests.
have in that? Cause I
Or
in our
HVAC,
budget.
or
It's
all
mostly
those
the
HVAC
HVAC.
items.
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that
Okay.
was the one, remember, Angela, where I'd said, we the 400
Yep,
so
yep,
thousand is
yep,
coming off
yep.
because this school was paid off and,
Yep.
we could either apply that to the operating budget
Okay,
or apply it to capital improvements.
Yep.
We might look at that and say, hey, take out some of the duct cleaning or other things that Bob had recommended and instead buy the van, right? So maybe it sounds like if there's a consensus here to update the capital improvement with the request for the van, if we get the van through capital, put the students on the van, take the 40,000, add the driver, add the secretary, and then enjoy that what amounts to 10,000 in savings.
we
You're fine.
have one van already,
Two.
and did we do it that way with capital?
We bought the first van with capital. The second van we bought this year with our operating budget by reallocating money. That's why when you get Stephanie's authorized spending report, it looks like a big negative in one area, but it's being offset because we moved it out of student transportation to equipment.
We had such an increase in student transportation that it made sense to purchase the second van and be able to realize some savings in the transportation line.
So maybe then I would suggest if there's an interest in getting the van through capital, do it that way, and then we're not up to 4.82, we can stick with the 4.61.
Can you please clarify the administrative support person? We had talked about that being shared with the guidance office. Is that 20,000 including that shared?
Yeah, that's
person?
increasing that from 0.5 to 1.0.
And that's in the budget.
It's not
Right,
in
it's
the
not
budget
in the
now,
budget,
but
it's
it would be as part of what we're talking about here. So I think the two-step here is move the van to capital. If we get the van, then get the savings of 63,000 by putting the students on the van and hiring the van driver. But all of that can be done through a capital process, not the operating budget. Although they kind of go hand in hand.
But would the van driver and would the administrative support increase be in our budget?
No,
or
you,
PA
what
budget?
I'm
To be
suggesting,
offset. the
Right.
savings.
We could move both of those headcounts to capital expense?
yeah,
No, it'll be the
No,
savings
put it in
from
capital.
transportation, so I'm just gonna
Yeah.
move money out of transportation into salary.
But that only happens if the capital request gets approved through the budget process.
if the capital request doesn't get approved, then it's all off the table unless then we can figure out a way to make it work the way we did this year.
I would go for that.
Dave, would you be comfortable with that? Is that a
We
sort
put
of,
it in capital.
or is that too clever by half?
No, I mean, it's how we funded the first van that we purchased 2 years ago. There's a precedent for it. In some ways, it makes sense to do it through the capital process. That is how, it's not, it makes sense in some ways to do it that way.
So then what I think I'm hearing you say here is, Charles, go update the capital requests to include the van. And then you can take out this conversation where it says additionally down to the options. All of that just kind of goes on the back burner in terms of adding the van driver and increasing the secretary until we know if we get the van through capital. If we get the van through capital, we'll move the students onto the van, which will save us the 67, increase the secretary, hire the van driver, and enjoy about a $15,000 placeholder in next year's operating budget.
When do we find out the capital? Was it before the budget gets approved?
No, it's part of the budget approval
Right.
process.
Right, but can we, remember when the whole thing happened with the insurance and I wasn't able to change it? I'm just concerned that if we don't put this in now and include it, that
You weren't able to change what? Remind me?
when the insurance decreased, because the budget was already submitted,
Hmm.
that we couldn't change it. So my concern is if we don't include these now,
Well, these are all new expenses. The secretary increase and the van driver are new expenses. They're not in this. They're
but
no-
I'm saying if we don't put it in right now and don't bring it forward in the budget, I'm concerned that we won't be able to put it in.
When does the long range
That's
capital,
what I'm-
when does the long range
asking.
capital budget get approved?
This Thursday, I meet with them.
But when do we find out if we
No,
actually
that's-
get it?
It's part of the budget process. It's
So
cap-
it's at the
capital
same time.
and, and the board of selectmen,
May is when we find out.
review the capital request and the town operating budget in March through March, and then it goes to a
Then
vote
they
by the
would let-
community May, first Monday in May.
So then they would
Second
let
Monday.
us change our budget if the van got approved.
I mean, it wouldn't, from my understanding, it wouldn't involve changing our budget. It would involve doing a transfer from transportation to.
These
Right,
positions.
but there's a savings of 15,922,
Right.
so the budget goes down, is what I'm
That's-
saying.
Gravy. Yeah, that
We never-
15,000.
And it only exists. if
So you're saying
this
just
is
keep it at the
approved.
4.61, got it.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
We
that,
could do your 4.5.
yeah, yeah.
And
no,
then
yeah,
maybe you can
that
fill
would
your
be close
oil
to the
tank.
4.5. Would
Yeah.
that be, we would be getting closer down to, it would be like 4.5 at that point, but I think a
I
lot
know,
of
it's
it
not
is.
gravy, it's oil.
Right. Oh, yeah.
That's right.
It's oil change.
Would you just add the van to what you included based on Bob's
That's right. So,
recommendations?
based on this conversation, if there's consensus, I will update that capital letter to say duct cleaning, HVAC, deionization ban, and then present that to the committee. If it goes through and it ends up in the budget that goes to the voters in May and we get it, great, that's paid for through capital. Then we'll say, all right, Sarah, take the $67,000 in those students, put them on the van, go on Indeed, hire a driver, increase the secretary and enjoy $15,000 savings. But
And while that doesn't represent, while that doesn't represent savings to our community or to our school district in this year, we do know that that is planning ahead for
Correct.
future years in which that would hopefully represent significant savings in our transportation line item.
And knowing that that M&J daily budget is gonna just increase, that's just gonna continue to. That cost is gonna continue to grow.
Yeah.
So I want to go back, Sarah, can you reiterate what you said regarding the van and the impact of, you don't want to advocate for a van at the expense of staffing? Did I hear you correctly? Because that, I guess, is my big hesitation, even the optics. Okay, we have to cut 2 special ed positions, but you're buying a new van, that where is our cost savings and where is the detriment to the students and where is that balance?
Right, so I think like my colleagues have said, like, we'll always take more if you're gonna give it. I think in this situation, I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding of outplacement and the causes. Certainly, there are students that they have profound neurodevelopmental disabilities. They were always a student that was gonna require things that we don't have here in Portland. However, there is other cases. There are a lot of cases where, like I mentioned last time, if we don't have the support in district, they need to go out. So what is the biggest cost savings to our district in regards to outplacement is not necessarily a van, it's bringing students back and supporting them enough so they don't get outplaced. So I would say that's just the schism there for me, is that how can I prevent outplacement? How can I prevent the transportation line from getting so high and from paying, $120,000 annually for some of these kids for tuition? It's provide things here. So we are taking a bit of a risk, in having less in makes out more likely, and the price tag associated with out is quite high. So it's just a discussion, for you all to have, but know that outplacement is not something that, oh, the student was always going to need this. There are cases like that, but there is a case for when services are not enough, the trajectory could be, caseloads are high, case managers not able to give enough intervention to a student. They move to a specialized program. Specialized program caseloads get incredibly high. They're not able to manage the number of kids in a specialized program. We need to outplace. Like that trajectory happens. It's not all of our cases. There are students where that would always be the case that they would need significant services out of district, but that's just the piece. It's hard to bring students back if there's not a robust back. And that would just be my concern whenever we discuss cuts to special education. But I also have the luxury of not being a taxpayer in Portland, and I don't have to make these decisions. I can come up here and advocate, and it doesn't impact my tax bill. So that's just my thought process. There is our biggest price tag is tuition and transportation, and how we avoid it is keep them here or bring them back. And we need services to do that. So hope that answers the question.
And I just have a question to follow that up, because you did say, people over vans, but could either of these, special ed teachers be 0.8 instead of full-time? Could we reduce it a little bit and get the high school special ed teacher and also the, special ed at Gildersleeve, but do it as a 0.8?
I mean, I will say there's a massive shortage of special education teachers in the state and our nation. So if someone wants to get another job, you go on CT Reap and there's hundreds of jobs. So I think that would put us at a disadvantage to finding quality and retaining quality folks, unfortunately. Yeah.
Let's kind of circle back to the van. I'm curious where folks are currently thinking. Are we interested
Well,
in
I'm
exploring putting it in the capital
curious, Sarah,
request?
if you buy the extra van, since you've already had one student that now you're placing on an existing van, will you get the usage out of the third van that you had discussed last week?
Yeah, we will. We have students that are all headed to the Wallingford area. There was one student in Berlin that we were going to also place that represented the bump. But we were able to put them with a change in start time, someone going middle to high on that first van.
Okay.
So that saving, if we don't buy the van, that 83,000 Dr. Britton referenced is still a savings because we're putting students on that first van. The third van has nothing to do with the 83. That would be on top of that. And that would be students that are all going to Wallingford. And it's a smaller savings because 2 of them are already shared on an M&J. So if it's a solo run, it is 42,000 a year. If we have 2 students, they share that van. So it's 21 per child. So that's why it's smaller.
And the other question that we had the other day was, because the threshold that we have to meet also includes transportation. If we are doing ourselves the service of reducing the cost of transportation,
Right.
Are we also cutting off our nose to spite ourselves with not being able to be reimbursed for that
Right.
excess?
No,
cost?
not a concern. So I reached out to a bunch of directors in the state, and Ellington Public Schools actually runs their own vans. A lot of districts actually responded and say they don't, but it's interesting and they want to learn more. So, trailblazers, I guess, in that regard. But they had their business office. So Stephanie and I would have to work together, come up with a daily in-house rate. So you take, insurance, wear and tear on the vehicle, gas, and you come up with a daily rate. And then you create a rate sheet and you input that for excess cost. So you can claim the excess cost, even if it isn't district. And Ellington, offered to reach out and share their billing formula and, how they do it.
Right. Okay, that's good news.
Yep.
Thank you.
I personally like the plan, putting it to capital
Mhm.
and adding the 2 FT or the 2 F, the new van driver and the administrative support. If
If
it
we
gets
get it.
approved.
If it's approved.
Yeah, I would be okay with that.
My initial thought was, let's wait a year on the van.
Mhm.
The capital, I'm with Angela, I would support that. We get that through capital.
What is our responsibility with approved capital expenses in terms of when we need to spend the money? Do we need to spend the money? By when?
Capital's a rolling. So.
We get so little of it, we always spend all of it.
We haven't had that problem. so,
Yeah.
right?
Activity fund
I know.
cover.
No easy money.
It's so rolling meaning,
So, for example, a couple years ago, we did a boiler at Valley View. We got appropriated, I think, $80,000. The quote and bid came in, it was like 60, so we had $20,000 left over. That sat in, because there's different line items, so that was under specifically boiler Valley View. So a year went by, we didn't need it for anything else, so then we reappropriated it into HVAC. So then we can use it for any HVAC purposes, not just a boiler. So we kind of redistributed it, but that's got to go through the town in a process.
Got
If there's anything left over.
For
So-
approved capital
Right.
specific uses.
Yep, so like the security grant we got, our bid, the quotes came in less, so we have an extra $12,000 in sitting to use for security stuff. That was last year. We bought some stuff for the van with that, other security things, so it's ongoing.
Mhm.
Are folks feeling, I mean, we've heard from Angela and from Stacy. I just want to kind of, anybody else want to weigh in? About the idea of including this in a capital request?
I can see the value of doing it. It depends on whether or not we get it or not. It will increase our capital request for this year by, you know, about a few thousand. I can see us doing it. I would not want to do the van in regular budget, and I would like to see the two full-time special ed teachers added back into the budget if we do the capital budget.
Yeah, responding to Kim, your thought or question about it.
We're not going there
The-
yet though, right?
The way I'm thinking about it is that moving the van over the capital budget doesn't impact special ed positions, or whether we're selecting or opting for that or not. They're kind of at this point, if we move that over, they become mutually exclusive.
Yeah, that's accurate. And it's a request. We're not, we don't know whether we'll receive the funds for it or not, but it is an investment in long-term transportation savings, and that's the case that Charles would make to the long range capital committee. And then eventually to the Board of Selectmen.
It will be what, like out of $48,000 cost in the budget for the van driver and for that administrative.
But
person.
those costs would have been in transportation.
Yeah, so
Savings would.
yeah,
So
just so you know, there's currently 63,717,000 in transportation. If we get the van, we'll take that out and use 6,800 of it to hire a van driver, 2,995 to increase the secretary, and then have 15,000 as gravy, as Steve said, right?
Gas.
Right, buy gas or oil
Other
changes.
expenses associated with operating vans.
Yeah, so it'll essentially be a transfer. We'll get the van on a different line, a different account, not the operating.
Right.
We'll transfer 63,000 out of student transportation into classified salaries. Hire those positions. And away we go. But if we don't get the van, we won't do that, and that 63,000 will sit in student transportation and not be transferred.
And pay for M&J to
Correct.
transport our students.
And that means there's an impact to the guidance department not getting.
Right.
Position.
Well, but the guidance 0.5 administrative position is in the budget,
It is
isn't
in the
it?
budget.
'Cause
Oh,
in
Yeah.
position
it's in
Right,
as a
this was the
Point
second
five,
half
still
and they
Correct.
decided.
Leave it to a one. If
Correct.
the
This would make it a
transportation-
1.0
Yeah.
position.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah,
With actually just physically sitting and doing the
Correct.
right.
PO work in the guidance.
And I'm, now that I think about it, I'm prepared to make a compelling case of 52,000 to this committee because of the long-term savings it will bring once that van is purchased.
Can you like lay it out for them
Sure.
with the, like, over 5 years with the annual, with,
I'll show them how much we've saved with the one van we purchased this year
Yep.
and say double it. And that's really what we're looking at in year 2 after we've already purchased the vehicle.
Right.
And that increasing that 0.5 secretary position is wonderful. will save me a certain number of headaches in general. And, you know, the van driver, yeah, that's the risk, right? That we have to go out on Indeed and hope we can find a van driver to manage. But,
Mhm.
you know, we've done okay with it this year. It's a lot of work. It is Olivia and Sarah on the phone every morning at 5 o'clock and scraping snow and doing all the things they're doing to make this work.
I would support adding this to the capital request and then we make decisions pending approval.
Mhm.
Good. It's good.
All right.
So we're back at 4.61.
Yep.
If we add in 2 special ed teachers, that's 0.3 and 0.2 approximately. That brings us back up in the full-time 0.4 art teacher. We add those positions back in, we add 0.6 back in, and we're back at 4.68.
No, 5.2.
All right.
2.8.
So just one more time, Stephanie, you said, if you added the 0.4 art, this, and the 2 special education, you'd be at
5.28.
5.3.
5.2.
What's 5.28?
That would be
The percentage increase.
So if we added to where I'm at, which is the 25,883, you added the 23,888 for the 0.4 art, 76 for the 0.1 special ed at high school, and the 65.1 special ed at, excuse me, 1.0 special ed at Gilder, so that would get you up to 5.28.
Right. Yep.
How are folks feeling? Do you have questions for Charles about these positions? Yeah, just acknowledging this is a tricky position to be in. You know, I've been kind of thinking about this all weekend, and particularly today after talking to Charles earlier today. The 0.6 art position that we currently have has been weighing on me because it's school of 350 students ought to be able to support a 1.0 high school art teacher to be able to meet the interests of our high school student population. And that was one of those positions that was a casualty of our budget process last year, year before, last year,
Last
it was
year.
last year. When we were in this really unfortunate position where we were having to pit our needs for meeting the needs of our special education students against our general education students, and it's just like what a crummy position to be in funding wise. But you know, I really would like to see us honor our commitment to making sure our kids have access to arts education and restore that position. If we're not able to do it this year, I would hope that we could commit to doing it next year. But I would like to give some thought to that position in particular, because I think our high school students need that and deserve that.
I would agree with that. Me too. I think that there are kids who need art more than they need other things sometimes, and not having access.
Well, and half the battle is interest, and there's already interest, and we're just, you know.
Right. And I believe
So
the art
you had to
teacher in
cut
the,
kids back.
I know.
the art teacher in the past also helped and collaborated with the school musical, with set design and other things, so. It's an integral part of the high school.
What would it be to just
So,
add the art?
Yeah, just adding art back in, it'd be 4.71.
So 4.71
Mm-hmm.
to get the 0.4 art back.
And what would the high school special ed teacher?
Although I think Gildersleeve was higher priority than high school in Sarah's write-up.
I'm not sure if that's the case. I mean, that's a good question for Charles.
I was going off of Sarah's write-up.
Well, Sarah indicated that Gildersleeve needed, but they have special ed teachers where the high school doesn't have one at all.
Well, I mean, if you look at her letter and student services.
Sarah, do you want to come up and speak? And Charles, you
What's
can
the
as well.
question? I'm sorry, I'm not clear on what is asking Sarah right now. The priority of the high school special ed or the Gildersleeve special ed?
Yeah, so I'll remind you, Sarah, and I'll let you talk to her, reminded us that cutting the special ed teacher at Gildersleeve, which was a grant funded position, would increase the caseloads from 11 to 17. Cutting the position at the high school, which wasn't a grant funded position, but is being done to save a grant funded position in the clinician at the middle school, so that we don't have one clinician running both schools, was a grant funded position. That would increase the caseloads from approximately 17 to 25.
Yep. So I wouldn't feel comfortable saying that one is more important than the other. I think they're different issues. At the high school, I will say in my 14 years of doing this, 25 per case manager is atypically large. Granted, those kids are typically less intensive in terms of hours, but the burden of PPT meetings and paperwork and, case management is a lot. At the elementary level, they're at 17, but that is also our prime time for referrals. A lot of students are not identified in special education by second grade, so those grow. So there is a testing burden, there is, the possibility that it grows. So I wouldn't feel comfortable at all saying one is more important over the other. They're both equally important and there's different reasons why they're important. But I think they both have an impact on our special ed, special ed programs, their enrollment. Those are high right now for what they are, and they have an impact on our outplacement. So, if it were me sitting here with a checkbook, I would have both of them and maybe 10 more, but I wouldn't feel comfortable saying one over the other as my endorsement.
If you had to pick one.
If I had to pick one, what's on the table here?
Yeah, that's it, right?
Yeah, I can't do that to my staff. I think they both do tremendously important jobs. And because I was an elementary teacher, I always lean towards elementary, but over 25 is very atypical for high school. So I'm not gonna put that out there into the ether.
Yeah.
Doesn't make it easy.
I hear her squirm.
Right.
So just so I'm clear, these were, for two of these positions were COVID paid, that we knew the cliff was coming. We talked about it every year.
One of these.
One of
was,
them.
Yes.
So
it's
what's
a-
changed since pre-COVID to now that we now have to have someone versus when we didn't?
Yeah, I think statewide student needs are increasing. More and more schools are outplacing more and more students, particularly in the realm of mental health. Students with suicide attempts, students with profound mental health issues. I don't think Portland's unique. Needs are rising across the state. And
Yeah, Sarah, let me take a crack at that one too, and they're different.
Yep.
Right? High school, for up until we got the COVID money, which was part of the mental health grant, we only ever had one social worker serving students in grades 7 through 12. That was unmanageable then.
Okay.
Based on the hours articulated for students in things like 504 plans. And there was a large caseload, and we were hearing about it from Bob Malafronte, and we were hearing about it from Katie Bohannon, that was unmanageable. And I heard clearly every year we were like the librarian, we were asking for that, but it was one of the things we just couldn't have, right?
Who are those two people?
They were the former clinicians here that shared both schools, and were stretched too thin. If you added up the number of hours and things like 504s and the number of hours of the day, it couldn't meet that, but it was just like impossible. We added that clinician position with COVID money when the need for mental health support skyrocketed and is still high. So we couldn't meet the needs even before we had the mental health grant. But with the mental health grant, we were able to get the second one, and that's where we got to. Now, in the interim, we added the third special education position at the high school 2 years ago. Now, the cliff of that money is gone. And I gotta be honest, I made the call, right? I said, you know what, we need this clinician position, and I'm making the call that we need them both, but it is the special education position we're eliminating to save the clinician position because the grant is going away. But that need for that clinician at the middle school had been there before COVID, but it definitely got exacerbated by the mental health needs and things like chronic absenteeism and other challenges we're dealing with now. And that's why I've prioritized that position. Specifically, chronic absenteeism is something that the social workers work very carefully on. And that's why we need that position at the middle school, which also relieves the burden on the high school social worker, right? So that's the kind of, it's always been a need. It has been a need, just like the librarian has been, there are many needs have gone unsatisfied, but that's how we ended up with this one. The Gildersleeve position, it wasn't COVID money, it was SIG grant. It was the school improvement grant that we received. And look, we were very clear that when the grant goes away, the positions go. And we've chipped away at the positions. Tracy was an interventionist at Gildersleeve. When she became the principal, we didn't fill that. If you remember, we laid off a reading teacher that we had when we found out in the middle of the summer that we lost $100,000 out of that grant. We've been chipping away at those because, that's not COVID money. That's a cliff we built with SIG grant money. And Ryan put it in the SIG grant for the added support. But the grant's gone. As go the grant, so go the positions funded by the grant. And I've been crystal clear that that's what happens with grant funds. Now, that's always the danger of grant money.
Love-hate relationship.
Right.
With grant money.
Yeah.
Well, it's the
that's
same
it.
kind of thing that we ran into with, and I know we needed our school and it was better than, what we had by far. But that was the same thing. We did the Gildersleeve grant at the time. I didn't even know what the Gildersleeve grant was. So Charles educated me. And it was like, we have that discussion, but then that is gonna roll into the operating budget. So it's like, yes, we needed it. Yes, the money is great to have. And no one's gonna say no, but this is now the ripple effect. And as the needs of our students continue to increase, it's,
You're exactly right, Ro. Exactly right.
read that letter that we
grants are
just
great
signed.
because they get the position.
Right.
But then people love that sugar buzz of that position. And it's very painful when the grant expires and the positions go. And I'm sorry for that. But you're right. It almost makes you want to say no to grants.
It's like this, you need that sustainability. You need
That's-
something that is going to generate that, offset that, have revenue to offset that.
Right. And as a reminder, part of, we've been looking ahead. The reality is we have 2 special ed positions that are SIG grant funded, but we're absorbing one of those because of the 5th grade reduction because there's a very small 4th grade class. Few.
Right.
Otherwise, we'd be talking about 3 special ed positions that we either have to add to or find offsetting cuts for. So you're exactly right, though, Stacy. And it's important to remind all of us that when we apply for these grants and we get them, they're wonderful and they're a boon for the extent of time that we have them. But when they go away, ouch.
And if our foundational funding through ECS was there and it was not at the 2013 level of $11,000, we wouldn't be in this boat and we wouldn't be having to go seeking grants to fund positions.
Can
We
I
would
ask-
have the money.
Does Biz have special ed teachers?
Yeah.
And the proposal, from what I understand right now, since we're talking about the May referendum, is to close or to move the students from Biz to the middle school. Would the special ed teacher at Biz move to the middle school, and could that potentially fill the need at the PHS special education?
Here's what I want
I
to
don't
bang
know
my
what
head
their
up for.
workload is. I'm just trying to be
Angela,
creative.
your point is really well made, that if we had, at the point that we are able to move forward with consolidation, it is going to help our staffing issues considerably and
Right,
and
but
yes,
we're
would
only
solve
at-
some of that.
With this is just a one tiny piece of it. I recognize that, but can we, we're doing it with the capital. We're saying, let's put the van out there and hope for the best. Even all the air conditioning stuff that Bob went through with us, that's gonna be part of the referendum. Can we do something creative with the biz special ed? You know, I'm just throwing it out.
Yeah, I think maybe what you're asking there, and it's a fair question. I'll frame it this way. Is there a way that we could look at our special education teaching caseloads at biz, understanding that there's going to be one fewer section there as we go from 5 to 4, and share some of that between Gildersleeve and Brownstone? We have done that before. Up until last year, we were sharing a special education teacher between Brownstone and the middle school. And it's not ideal, right? I mean, it's not, we've done it, but I can tell you that it does put a strain on our people because they have to travel. And especially in that area of special education where you need to be ever present for your students, it's complicated, not impossible. And it might be something that, if not either of these two positions tonight aren't added back, certainly the leadership team and I are aware of this, and Sarah is aware of this, and we're going to be looking to other things. And Sarah's already started conversations with Kate, looking at where other placeholder savings might be. That if placeholder savings work to our advantage in terms of outplacements or transportation or redesigning leadership positions and other things, that we might be able to come to you and add things back. But don't forget, we also only have 5 kindergarten teachers. We've cut 4 paraprofessionals. There are other things in the pipeline too. But it's a fair question. I think your question was, could we share a special ed teacher between Brownstone and Gildersleeve, or Brownstone and the middle school, or middle school and high school? The answer is yes. It's very complicated to do. But that makes the point. Part of the reason.
But would it make it easier if you're moving the biz kids to the high school?
Are you
Yeah,
saying
the
to move the
sixth grade.
6th grade to the middle school in this
Right.
coming calendar year? Is that what you're asking?
Isn't that what's on the table for the referendum?
So
For this year.
Not for this year. Well,
It would,
it might,
not?
if we get to a referendum in May.
Yeah.
That calls for a consolidation from 3 elementary schools to 2. Yes, the 6th grade would be on a path to get to the middle school, but it definitely wouldn't happen by next September.
okay.
Because if we haven't, God willing, a plan in May, Stephanie and I have to submit a grant application in June. We wouldn't find out from the state until following December. So we would be when we're doing this year's budget, when we're here this time next year and everything works out, I might be asking you for like a 1.2% increase and a complete redesign of staffing that I was praying for this year because yeah, man, I was ready. Like we were ready. We had all of these big ideas about positions going to the middle school, and including clinicians and PE and art and all of these things, but well, we lost. And this is the ripple-on effect that we're now having to staff 3 elementary schools for 630 kids, which is very expensive.
Kind of what I was saying at the beginning of this meeting, privately to Kim, that we've got this increase now, but Portland, you voted not to do the other, so you still have 3 schools you gotta support.
You gotta support them in there, and you see that reflected in electricity and maintenance and transporting kids all over town. And we need 3 principals and 3 nurses and 6 custodians and 6 administrative assistants. Yes, we can't divide people in half.
My other question is there any opportunity for Gildersleeve grant to fund these 2?
No, they don't fund people. They
Okay.
fund
Very
things
good.
and experiences.
Okay.
So Charles, am I correct in paraphrasing what you just said, that if there were identified placeholder savings throughout the year, that one of these restoring a special education position to the high school or to Gildersleeve, depending on student needs, would be a top priority?
100%.
But what if we need a kindergarten teacher?
But what if we need kindergarten
But what if
teacher
we
or
need a kindergarten
paraprofessionals
teacher? Yeah,
or
of
boiler
course,
breaks
of
or
course.
I'm
the tennis courts fall apart. Yeah.
concerned about the Gildersleeve special education teacher though, because yes, it was grant funded. Yes, there was a clip coming, you were crystal clear, and we saw, I believe, a reduction in the gap between high need students' achievement and other and all students' achievement. And that's due to having the grade level special education teachers. So if we pull that out, I would anticipate a regression, and this is the age at which there are increased identifications, like we heard from the classroom educators, we heard from the special education teachers collectively there that they are concerned about this. So I share their concern for that position in particular.
I've spoken with colleagues at the 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5 level. And when I suggested a caseload of 16 or 17, they said drowning at, lesser numbers right now. So we're setting our teachers up for a very difficult year.
And setting ourselves up potentially for increased outplacement expenses as well, which concerns me. We can't meet their needs in district.
So are you both suggesting that we put the Gildersleeve special ed position back in the budget?
It's a role that's currently serving students. I think the thing that I struggle with is we've added back in 0.2% position with the health position that's not currently being used to support students, but we're not including a role that is currently supporting students. And that's something that I'm wrestling with.
And what I'm wrestling with too is, I understand Olivia's job, and I understand that the buses is a lot, but adding that 20,000 as a not directly supporting students, and is there another way to be creative about it? Making that more of a stipend role, increasing that stipend versus moving it to that full 0.5 to help support that without adding that amount.
What is the 0.5
That's like a-
secretarial?
To realize
again?
additional savings there, you're
Right.
saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
What's the 0.5 secretarial position?
Guidance.
It's the guidance, but what's the cost?
Let's hear, it's for
Yeah,
20,000.
and just as a reminder,
but
we're
that-
not.
Yeah, but
We
that
don't
doesn't
even know
exist.
that.
It doesn't, it's not in the budget, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not in the budget.
That's a conversation if we get the van.
Right.
So it's 20,000 plus. You're saying the 0.2 to add 0.2 to the health teacher, which is another 30, it's 15. Comes out to be $35,800 that we could save and add to one of the special ed teacher positions.
Yeah, but that's not it. So let me level set us, get us back. You're currently at a 4.61% increase.
Yep.
The whole thing on the van, cross all that out, pending a $52,000 van. So put increasing secretary at the high school, put van driver, put 52,000 for a van, all that's out, and that's not included in the 4.61 right now.
Right.
We'll be back at that, bite at that apple if we get through capital, maybe, but right now, in the 4.61 you're at, that's not included. Where we were, it sounded, Laurel, like you were saying, put the art teacher back in.
That's, that's my feeling. I don't know if that's echoed and shared by the board, but I do feel strongly that we have, as long as I've been on the board, maintained a 1.0 Portland High School art teacher. And last year it was purely a function of budget, that it was reduced. It was not a reflection of student need. And I would like to see it restored, but that's me speaking.
If you did, that would get you from the 4.61 to a 4.71. And then 5.28 for if you had both special education teachers back. That's a number.
Yeah,
That would be my recommendation. Just go with the 5.28. That's my opinion. I mean, I'm hearing that we need the special ed.
There's a
The
possibility
caseloads
of
are pretty
recouping.
high.
Sorry.
Just
There's-
my opinion.
Yeah, there's just a possibility, it sounded like, of recouping costs so that at least one of them could be built back in. So could we build one back in now, thinking that possibly we could build another second one in after the school year commences?
So for
Unless I
this,
misunderstood.
Like I'm at the casino.
I know.
rolling the dice here.
So for the sake of math, if we
Yeah.
were with the art at 4.71. And we added, let's say we added the Gildersleeve, we would go up another 0.2,
4.97.
4.97.
So we're back where we started.
Yeah.
Mhm. We have a little bit more though than,
Yeah.
we have.
Yeah.
Mhm. But just so does it sound like you're either at 4.61, 4.71, 4.97, or 5.28?
I say go with 5.28 and let the Board of Selectmen.
Me too.
Well, that's what I was gonna say
Ask us
next.
cut.
He's gotta sell this.
Well, we can.
Well,
sell
I
it. think
feel
we can
comfortable
sell it.
coming in
The
under
case
5
is-
personally. I understand that we're not talking about, I mean. We have a responsibility to our taxpayers also. We came in last year with a 5%, slightly
Mhm.
over 5% request, and we were in dire straits last year, and that 5% represented significant cuts to our
Mhm.
budget. We're not maybe in quite as dire straits, but we're trying to build back some of what we lost and what we struggled with. And,
We've also
I-
tried to build back from a zero budget a few years ago and that hasn't happened. So
but I am mindful that we are recouping grant. We are recouping things into our budget that were grant funded. And so I personally, I would feel more comfortable coming in under 5, but I do appreciate the desire on this board to maintain staffing that supports our students, and if we're able to incorporate even one of these special education positions. But I think that would be.
I mean,
an
we're
important
right in
step.
and we're right in the middle of the 31 districts that Charles sent us today. We're
Yeah,
number
we are.
17 out of the 31. Of course, that's all that's been reported, but in terms of like the increase that has the superintendent's proposed increase.
mhm.
So who knows where the rest of the districts will land, but
So Laurel, when you're saying under 5, are you saying the 4.97 or are you saying the 4.71? How far under 5, I guess?
I mean,
Cause that's where I'm at. I'm
Mm.
right with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a really compelling case to be made for restoring one of the special education positions.
Mm.
And I hear what Dave said too, like, bring forward a request that reflects what we need. And then it's not really under our control what happens at the next step. But I would support adding back a special education position. I would support a 4.97. Don't know where
Me
other
too.
folks are sitting.
I would too. Makes sense. We're getting the health back, we're getting the art teacher back, and we're getting one of the two. The other one, maybe we can figure it out in the next 6 months.
Stephanie got that. Want to give them sounds like you're out of 4.97. You want to give the dollar amount.
I'd love to hear from everybody, so we just, know how folks are feeling.
I'm in agreement with 4.97.
So you're recommending the Gildersleeve, not PHS?
Yeah. I think if we can do an earlier intervention for students, it improves
And the
longer term
caseload is a lot
outcomes.
higher too.
Caseload is higher at the high school, but by equipping.
No, I think it was 11 to 17 at the high school.
That can help
17 to 25 at the.
A flip-flop.
17 and 25 at the high school.
But an earlier intervention is going to lead to improved longer term outcomes and hopefully reduced outplacements as well. The students are getting the intervention they need at an earlier time.
I would hope that if there was extra money at the end of the year, that we consider restoring that high school special ed teacher.
I certainly would agree with you, Meg, that we've
I
got to keep
really-
that front of our
We
mind.
absolutely have to. It's still about people and
Yeah.
we can only do so much.
Yep.
I would support 4.97, although I really like 5.28.
That's how I feel too, Meg. I just don't like that the grades of the kids too are in jeopardy. And I think that especially attention would probably help after COVID.
Yeah, for sure.
Well,
I mean,
we're
we've
not
seen
out of
that.
the
We've seen
woods.
Evidence of that.
Yeah. And that,
Yeah.
to me, it's not a lot more of an ask. But
Tim, how are you feeling about it?
Yeah, I think 4.97 is, as it's a high number, but I think it's reasonable in that we're trying to build back and keep what we have. I am appreciative to Charles with the looking under every stone and really looking at that software piece, so thank you for that. And yeah, trying to keep people that are face to face with their students as much as possible to have that impact.
Yeah. Any final thoughts from you, Charles or Stephanie?
Take the money.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're right where we started, right? You're right at what I brought to you, so.
We are right where you
It's your extra
started, but
things,
I
right?
think that the tweaking that has happened in the interim and, I mean, and I guess I just do want to say this, that what I really appreciate about this board is just how much value and appreciation we have for the people who are working with our students every day, and the way that we were able to make some modifications to find a little bit of savings here and a little bit of savings there to prioritize keeping as much of our staff as we can in place. You know, I think that's very meaningful.
I also think this has been the most meaningful budget conversation that we've had ever in my time on the board. The transparency from the superintendent and Stephanie to the good conversation and questions that everybody had, to the administrators who've hung in here for 3 weeks in a row. Thank you, because this really, it doesn't represent what we really would do if we had all the money in the world, and I hope you know that. And this is really, it's hurtful to not be able to fund all of the requests at the same time, but we'll do the best we can, and I know that you will too. And I'm in tears. I feel teary-eyed about, what we're doing. It's not an easy time, and it's going to be challenging in the next 4 years. So let's hope that nothing else changes in any other place. Do you want me to make a motion? I'm happy to make the motion, I guess. I'll make the motion to the full board that the Portland Board of Education adopt the Portland Board of Education budget in the amount of $25,973,231, representing a 4.9% increase.
4.97.
I'm sorry, 4.97%. And that's it.
Is there a second? Seconded by Stacy. Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, we now have a Board of Education
board
budget
budget,
for the 2025-26 school year, and next steps that will go to our first selectman, and we'll take it from there. All right, this next one to be fast is the 2025-2026 school district calendar. This is a second reading. Have there been any questions that have come up since the last time we looked at this?
Just a comment that I appreciate having along with your holidays.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else? No, if not, is there a motion to move forward with it?
So move to adopt the Portland Public Schools calendar for 25-26 school year.
Moved by Meg, is there a second? Seconded by Kim, any discussion?
Just one thing, the last day of school being on a Monday again.
It'll be a Tuesday or Wednesday by the time we get through snow days. Yeah,
Okay, yeah, very good.
yeah, it would be really unique if there was not a single school day impacted by weather.
Or we have.
Has that ever happened? I mean,
We
not
have
in my
some-
memory.
We have some students
Yeah.
who want
We
to
always
come.
get at least two.
and take-
Yeah,
We only had one
take
this
the
year.
day away.
yeah.
If we had school
Remember
yesterday.
those boys giving
Right.
little
I know.
presentations,
Yeah,
very.
Oh, can we talk again about just
won't forget.
Juneteenth with the impact of what do we need for snow days to be?
Yeah.
In that situation where Juneteenth then was considered a day off, but come back that
So
Monday.
the-
Is that
Something
something
like
decided on?
No, so the law says you can have school that day. You just have to do instructional activities marking the holiday. Now, so we would have school on Juneteenth. We would just need to celebrate it. But so there are some challenges that we're working through with our contracts, and you're going to see the first iteration of that in a contract you'll be looking at soon. So why don't we save that chat for?
I think it really, yeah, it would be a conversation that we would have at the board and a decision to make, because we haven't been in a decision. We haven't been in a position where we've had to make a decision about school on Juneteenth or not. We did have some preliminary conversations at the board a few months back, where there was an interest expressed among board members in treating Juneteenth similar to the way we treat Veterans Day, and to keep it in alignment with how the town operates Juneteenth as a holiday. So I think maybe as we get closer to that, maybe we would have a more formal discussion about that. But that's a good question. Any other questions, comments? Nope. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes unanimously. All right. That's calendar aside. The next item is Board of Education Policy 6148. This is the FAFSA policy, and it's a second reading. Were there any additional questions or thoughts since the last time we discussed this?
No, but thank you for the red text copy.
Yeah, that
I
seeing
can see.
what's being replaced is
Yeah.
helpful. I agree. I'll make a motion to accept the FAFSA complete program policies P 6148 as presented tonight.
There's a second,
I'll second that.
seconded by Dave. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, we're gonna move on to committee reports. Curriculum has not met since our last meeting, but we will be meeting end of February. I think we're working on nailing down a date,
The 19th,
February 19th.
that's what I think is there right now.
I think you might be right. Policy,
Did not meet in January. We have a meeting in February, and welcome Stacy to our committee.
and we're gonna work with Stacy to nail down a date and time that works for the
Yeah,
whole committee.
Yeah, perfect.
I'm just curious, have we already revisited our cell phone policies? And have
That's to be
we-
discussed in the spring because there's an administrative directive which was put in place, which it was in place and was explained to parents at the high school level. And we're waiting to see what the outcome of the directive is without going into making a policy that we might not need. So it's,
We wanted to see how implementation went at the high school and middle school this year and then get feedback from our administrators.
so
Okay.
that's.
So will you bring that information to the board?
Of course,
Once you?
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
I'm wondering,
Yeah,
if we'll
absolutely.
be informed as
Oh, yeah.
you go along.
Yeah, no, we will. We decided in December to wait until the spring to really revisit and see how that went. So
Okay.
we'll be good.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Personnel. We have been in negotiations with our administrative
There we go.
assistants, and we believe we have reached a tentative agreement. So hopefully there'll be something to take action on in the near future. And we have one contract left for this year.
And welcome Dave to the personnel committee.
Welcome, Dave.
Yeah, thank you. Just in time for one more.
Buildings and grounds.
No meeting scheduled at this point. We met last week, went over the legislative agenda for CREC and talked about the Head Start grant that was applied for, and we got a perfect score on the Head Start grant. We don't know if we've gotten it yet, but that will continue to fund the CREC Head Start program, which they operate 3 different schools. And that was it.
Board of Selectmen.
It was just a meeting where they chose the new selectmen, and like us, they did some shuffling of committee members. Or not shuffling, but a lot of people resigned and they appointed new ones, and it happens this time of the year.
Youth Services.
Has not met. Courtney should be coming back from her maternity leave, and I recommend that she be invited to the Wellness Committee, which is going to meet on the 22nd or the 28th, if she can't make it on the 22nd. But nothing, no action right now.
Equity and Inclusion Coalition.
We had a meeting scheduled for this month, but with Eric's departure, Stephen Jewell, who is the co-chair, opted to hold off until our next meeting, March 27th, when we're finalizing the civil discourse framework we've been discussing as a group, and also we'll discuss next steps as a coalition.
Okay. Strategic capital improvements. We did not meet last week when we were in budget negotiations, budget workshops. But the prior week we met and had a good conversation with Mike Serrano from Friar. Requested that he and his team work on pulling together updated numbers for some different configurations of the elementary schools if we were to move forward with consolidation to 2 elementary schools. So I think he's doing a
Yeah.
walkthrough with Bob.
I can give you a quick update on that. They were here this week. Bob let them tour Gildersleeve. So he was here with his team of mechanical inspectors, building inspectors looking at Gildersleeve. To this Thursday night, the committee's meeting here if you're interested. And the goal of that meeting is for Friar to walk the committee through the current state of Valley View, Gildersleeve, and Brownstone. Like just kind of walk us through the condition of those facilities based on their earlier analysis and the types of things that make just doing capital improvements on those difficult. Right, so that will be an interesting experience for the committee to learn about
The needs and the challenges.
the needs and the challenges, right? And then the hope is that the Thursday after that, hopefully, they're going to try to work quick. We're going to get a snapshot of how much it would be to turn Valley View into a pre-K 2 school, slightly extend it with enough room for the one word to go back to the old days when it was a pre-K 2, except without portable classrooms, bricks and mortar, and to turn Gildersleeve into a potential 3 through 5, and to potentially turn Gildersleeve into a pre-K 2 and Brownstone into a 3 through 5. With an understanding that at the last committee meeting, there were some real concerns and reservations about third graders in particular at Brownstone in that facility, in that location. So big couple weeks coming up with, I think some decisions hopefully soon.
Yes.
Right.
So we'll see Thursday.
6 o'clock or 7?
6 o'clock here. And it will
But
be
it'll be on Zoom.
It'll
It
be
will
on
be on Zoom.
It'll be on the town side Zoom, by the way. The
Town Zoom.
That's this Thursday night.
Yeah.
This Thursday.
And it is on the agenda as a town Zoom room, not a board. Zoom.
Supposed to a board of Zoom, yeah, okay. Good to have clarity. I think that's all of our committee reports. Do we have anyone with us in person or online who wishes to address the board at this point? All right, well, we're gonna keep it moving because it's getting late. Board of Education member comments. Start over on this side this time, Angela. No, I'll start down here. Sorry, Caitlin. Apologies.
I don't have anything, but I enjoyed the superheroes.
I did too. Angela?
I look forward to seeing the response we get from Christy and Norm Needleman on the letter that we signed. Hopefully we'll get some good results by our constituents.
Thank you for drafting those letters. Those were great. I encourage you all to come to the wrestling tournaments. That is statewide known as the best concession stand, so just come for lunch Thursdays. It is a lot of fun. And thanks everybody for all your hard work.
Yeah, wrestling sounds like a great way to spend a couple of weekends, and food sounds even better. And thanks again to everybody for the hard work. I do have a request, however, that the executive session be either a retreat or postponed until another meeting, because given the lateness of the hour and also the recovering superintendent from the flu, I don't think we need to go to 10 o'clock tonight. So that's my request, and thank you all for being great board members and hanging in here.
I'll come over here. Stacy,
I also enjoyed the superhero assembly presentation. I feel like we all need a few capes, you know, so we could all use some superhero powers going through this budget.
Yeah, give us that
session,
information.
so. No, I'm happy to be back and I agree with whoever said whose comment was about, you know, this deliberation and coming in. Yes, I knew the budget process before, but coming in to this packet and it was just very well organized and there was a lot more information up front and it was very helpful to jump back in. So, thank you.
Yeah, likewise, I appreciated being able to have this dialogue and around like the capital budget as well and kind of doing some creative problem solving. So thanks to everyone for that, and particularly to Stephanie and Charles for putting this together.
Yeah, I'd say the exact same thing. I'm probably the one that asked for the most changes and more detail and I hope it was beneficial for everyone.
I would support pushing our executive session item off to our next meeting of February 4th, and I think that that's perfectly acceptable. I would anticipate a shorter agenda then, and I know you're still on the mend and let's save the kind of mid-year review and the Board of Ed mid-year review. Consider ourselves part of that mid-year review process. We can save that, table it till February 4th.
I would also request that we get some information out to people to be thinking about our self-evaluation and as well as just questions we might want to ask Charles for that review. And we don't have anything in writing.
No, it's more of an informal
casual.
conversation, reflection on our goals.
I will be in Zoom, I will be on a Zoom call that night because I'll be in Washington DC.
Okay, so we will table our executive session and that just leaves us our motion to adjourn.
So moved, Meg.
Thank you, Kim. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.